Admiral Jake Morrison walked through the long corridors of the Galactic Council Station with heavy steps. His boots echoed against the smooth metal floors as he made his way to the main assembly hall. The walls around him were covered with symbols. From hundreds of different alien species, each one representing a member of the Great Galactic Council that had ruled the galaxy for over 2,000 years, Jake had been coming to this station for 15 years now, ever since Earth joined the Council. He remembered how excited humanity had been back then. First contact with alien life had been everything they dreamed of. The aliens were advanced, peaceful, and willing to share their knowledge with the newcomers from a small blue planet on the edge of the galaxy. But 15 years of dealing with council bureaucracy had changed Jake's mind completely. What started as wonder and excitement had slowly turned into frustration and anger. Every request humanity made was denied or delayed. For years, every new technology they tried to develop was blocked by some ancient regulation. Every attempt to explore new star systems was stopped by safety protocols that seemed designed to keep humans locked in their small corner of space. Dr. Lisa Kane was already waiting for him in the human delegation quarters. She sat at her desk, reviewing the latest rejection notice from the council. Her face showed the same tired expression that had become common among all human representatives. Lisa had spent the last 8 years trying to work within the council system, believing that patience and diplomacy would eventually pay off. They said no again, Lisa told Jake without looking up from her datapad. The research station near the Vale Nebula has been denied for the 3rd time. They claim it violates temporal safety protocols established by the Chronarch Treaty of 2847. Jake sat down heavily in the chair across from her desk. The Chronarch Treaty that nobody has ever seen a copy of. The one that supposedly prevents any species from studying time-space anomalies without council oversight. The same one, Lisa replied with a bitter laugh. Along with the Harmony Accords that prevent us from developing our own communication networks, the peace protocols that limit our military technology, and about 50 other treaties that all seem to have one thing in common. They keep humans from advancing beyond what the Council wants us to be. Jake finished for her. Captain Ryan Brooks entered the room carrying a cup of coffee and looking just as frustrated as the other two. Ryan commanded the human fleet stationed at the Council facility, which mostly consisted of transport ships and light patrol vessels. The Council had been very specific about what kind of military presence humanity was allowed to maintain. I just got word from Earth, Ryan said as he sat down. President Adams is asking for our recommendation on the Council membership review. The Senate is getting tired of paying membership fees for an organization that treats us like second-class citizens. Jake looked out the window at the massive space station that housed the Council chambers. Ships from dozens of different species came and went constantly, carrying trade goods, diplomatic messages, and passengers between the thousands of worlds that made up Council space. Humanity had been proud to be part of this great galactic community, but now it felt more like a prison than a partnership. What really bothers me, Lisa said quietly, is how different the other species treat us compared to how they treat each other. The Vorthic Dominion gets approval for new military technology every few months. The Zilani Commonwealth just opened 3 new research facilities in sectors we're not even allowed to visit. But when humans ask for permission to study a nebula, suddenly it's a threat to galactic stability. Ryan nodded in agreement. I've been watching the patrol schedules for months now. Every time one of our ships approaches the boundary of our assigned territory, there's always a Council enforcement vessel nearby. They claim it's for our protection, but it feels more like surveillance. Jake stood up and walked to the communication console in the corner of the room. He had been thinking about this moment for weeks, ever since the latest round of rejections and restrictions had come down from the Council leadership. Earth's government had given him full authority to make decisions regarding humanity's relationship with the Council, and he was finally ready to use that authority. I want to call a meeting with the full human delegation, Jake said. Everyone who represents Earth in this Council needs to hear what I'm about to propose. 2 hours later, 37. Humans sat around the conference table in the delegation's secure meeting room. These men and women represented every aspect of humanity's involvement with the Council, from trade representatives to military officers to scientific researchers. Jake looked at each face and saw the same mix of frustration and disappointment that he felt himself. "Ladies and gentlemen," Jake began, "we have a decision to make. For 15 years, we have tried to work within the Council system. We have followed their rules, paid their fees, and accepted their limitations on our development. We believe that being part of this galactic community was worth the restrictions they placed on us." Dr. Patricia Wells, the head of the Human Science Division, raised her hand. "Admiral, are you suggesting we consider leaving the Council? The economic consequences alone would be devastating. We depend on Council trade networks for dozens of essential resources. Do we really depend on them? Or have we been told we depend on them?" Jake asked. Before we joined the Council, humanity was already developing faster-than-light travel, quantum communication systems, and advanced manufacturing techniques. We put all of that research on hold because the Council said their methods were better and safer. Captain Helen Murphy, who commanded the human merchant fleet, spoke up. "The Council provides us with access to markets across the galaxy. Our economy has grown tremendously since we joined." "Has it really grown, or have we just become more dependent?" Ryan asked. "I've been looking at the trade agreements we signed. Almost everything we export goes to Council distribution centers, where it gets processed and resold to other species at prices we never see. Meanwhile, we buy finished goods from Council suppliers at rates that seem designed to keep us from developing our own manufacturing capabilities." Lisa pulled up a holographic display showing humanity's technological progress over the past 50 years. "Look at this chart. Before Council membership, our technology was advancing at an exponential rate. After we joined, that progress slowed to almost nothing. Every time our scientists propose a new research project, the Council finds some regulation that prevents it." The debate continued for several hours, but Jake could see that opinion in the room was shifting. These were smart, dedicated people who had spent years trying to make the Council relationship work. They were finally admitting what Jake had suspected. For a long time, humanity was not a partner in the Galactic Council. They were a managed resource. The final vote was unanimous. Every human representative agreed that Earth should withdraw from the Council immediately. Jake composed the formal notification message while Ryan prepared to transmit it to every Council member simultaneously. "Effective immediately, humanity. Withdraws from the Galactic Council," Jake dictated as Lisa typed the words. "We thank you for the lessons learned and wish you well in your future endeavors. Earth will maintain peaceful relations with all species but will no longer be bound by Council regulations or oversight." Ryan sent the message at exactly 14:30 station time. Within minutes, acknowledgement signals began coming back from Council member species across the galaxy. Most were brief and formal, but Jake noticed that several alien delegations seemed surprised by the announcement. As the human fleet prepared to depart the Council station, Jake felt a mixture of relief and uncertainty. They were finally free from the restrictions and bureaucracy that had held humanity back for 15 years. But he also knew they were stepping into unknown territory. With no idea what consequences their decision might bring, the journey back to Earth would take 3 days, giving them time to plan for whatever came next. Jake looked back at the Council station one last time as their ships entered hyperspace, not knowing that his decision had just triggered ancient protocols that had been waiting for exactly this moment for over 1,000 years. Ambassador Zexthel stood in the emergency session chamber of the Galactic Council, his 6 eyes gleaming with satisfaction as he addressed the gathered representatives. The Vorthek delegate had been waiting for this moment for years, and now that humanity had finally shown their true nature by abandoning the Council, he could put his plans into motion. "Fellow Council members," Zexthel announced in his translated voice that carried across the chamber, "the humans have revealed what many of us suspected all along. They are reckless, impulsive, and fundamentally incompatible with our carefully maintained galactic harmony. Their departure is not a loss but a blessing that protects us all from their chaotic influence. The other alien delegates murmured their agreement, though some seemed uncertain about the sudden turn of events. The Calorian representative, a tall being with crystalline skin, raised one of her forearms to speak. Ambassador Zexthal, while the human departure was unexpected, should we not attempt diplomatic contact to resolve whatever concerns led to their decision? Zexthal's eyes flashed with annoyance at the suggestion. Delegate Sherryville, the humans made their position clear. They rejected our guidance, our wisdom, and our protection. Any species that chooses isolation over cooperation cannot be trusted to act responsibly in galactic affairs. What none of the council members realized was that humanity's withdrawal had triggered automatic systems that had been dormant for centuries. Deep within the council's central databases, ancient programs began activating protocols that most current members had never heard of. These systems had been designed by the council's founding species to maintain order and prevent any member civilization from becoming too independent or powerful. Meanwhile, back on Earth, strange things were beginning to happen, Captain Steve. Parker had been running cargo routes between Earth and the outer colonies for 8 years, carrying supplies that seemed routine and unimportant. His ship, the Steady Progress, transported everything from medical supplies to communication equipment to raw materials for construction projects. Steve was reviewing his delivery schedules when he received urgent messages from 17 different colonies and space stations. Every single location was reporting critical shortages of essential items that his cargo runs had been providing. Food preservation systems were failing on agricultural stations. Communication relays were going offline at mining operations. Even basic life support components were running out at research facilities. I don't understand it, Steve told his first officer, Lieutenant Gary Chun, as they studied the supply requests flooding their communication system. These seemed like small deliveries when I was making them. A few tons of equipment here, some spare parts there. But now that the supply chain is broken, everything is falling apart. Gary pulled up a star map showing all of Steve's regular delivery routes. Captain, look at this pattern. Your cargo runs weren't just random deliveries. They were connecting critical supply nodes across this entire sector. Without these connections, dozens of star systems are cut off from essential resources. The economic crisis spread quickly through what had been council-controlled space near human territory. Species that had grown dependent on human logistics, networks suddenly found themselves unable to maintain basic infrastructure. Trade routes that had operated smoothly for decades collapsed overnight as human ships stopped making their regular runs. On Earth, President Claire Adams received reports that confused and worried her administration. The alien embassies that had been established in major cities around the world were shutting down with almost no notice. Diplomatic staff from dozens of different species were packing their belongings and requesting immediate transport off the planet. Dr. Mike Torres, who had worked closely with alien researchers for 12 years, watched his Zelani colleagues frantically loading their equipment onto transport ships. Ambassador Yeltar, what's the rush? Mike asked as the alien scientist sealed the last of his research containers. Is this because we left the council? We can still maintain scientific cooperation as independent partners. The Zelani ambassador's translator produced nervous clicking sounds before responding. Dr. Torres, there are protocols. Ancient rules that must be followed when a species chooses isolation. It is not safe for council citizens to remain in non-member territory during transition periods. Mike found the answer strange and concerning. What kind of transition periods? What protocols are you talking about? But Ambassador Yeltar had already boarded his transport ship and refused to answer any more questions. Within hours, the Zelani embassy was empty, leaving behind only basic furniture and a few forgotten data pads. The same scene played out at embassies around the world. The Corvan trade representatives left their commercial offices without completing ongoing business deals. The Nethys Cultural Exchange Program ended abruptly, with alien students and teachers departing Earth immediately. Even the medical researchers, who had been working on joint projects with human scientists, packed up their equipment and left without explanation. Dr. Sarah Williams, who headed Earth's xenobiology department, noticed something even more troubling. The alien technology that humans had been permitted to use during their council membership was beginning to malfunction. Medical scanners that had worked perfectly for years suddenly produced error messages in alien languages. Environmental processing. Units that maintained air quality on space stations started shutting down randomly. Communication devices that connected human colonies to the broader galaxy went completely silent. "This isn't normal equipment failure," Sarah told her research team as they examined a Vorthak medical scanner that had stopped working overnight. "The technology is actively disabling itself. Look at these diagnostic readings. The internal systems are receiving some kind of shutdown signal and responding by erasing their operational programs." Lieutenant Beth Hamilton, a communications specialist stationed at Earth's orbital defense platform, was the first to detect the strange energy signatures coming from deep space. Her monitoring equipment picked up massive power fluctuations from sources that had never shown any activity before. When she tried to trace the signals, she discovered they were coming from locations that weren't supposed to have any artificial structures. "Commander Ross, you need to see this," Beth called to her supervisor as she displayed the sensor data on the main screen. "I'm detecting energy signatures consistent with massive technological installations powering up throughout this entire sector of the galaxy. The problem is, according to all our star charts, these locations are supposed to be empty space." Commander Ross studied the readings with growing concern. "How many sources are we talking about, Lieutenant?" "At least 47 distinct signatures within scanning range, sir, and the power levels are enormous." "Whatever these installations are, they're bigger than anything in the Council fleet." As reports came in from other human monitoring stations, a disturbing pattern emerged. Ancient structures were awakening throughout the galaxy, responding to some signal that had been triggered by humanity's departure from the Council. These installations had been hidden from normal sensor sweeps, but now they were actively powering up and preparing for some unknown purpose. President Adams called an emergency meeting with Earth's top military and scientific leaders. The situation was becoming more serious by the hour, and they needed to understand what humanity had stumbled into by leaving the Council. "Ladies and gentlemen," President Adams addressed the assembled officials, "we're facing multiple crises simultaneously. Our economy is disrupted, our technology is failing, our allies have abandoned us, and now we're detecting massive unknown installations activating throughout the galaxy. I need answers, and I need them fast." Admiral Morrison, who had just returned from the Council station, reviewed the intelligence reports with growing alarm. "Madam President, I believe we may have triggered some kind of automated response by withdrawing from the Council. The alien evacuations, the technology failures, and these awakening installations all suggest that our departure activated protocols we didn't know existed." Dr. Williams added her observations about the systematic technology failures. "The alien equipment isn't just breaking down randomly. It's receiving specific shutdown commands and then erasing itself. Someone or something is deliberately cutting off our access to Council technology." As Earth's leaders tried to understand their new situation, they had no idea that the Galactic Council had protocols for dealing with species that attempted to leave their control. For over 1,000 years, no member civilization had successfully withdrawn from the Council and survived the consequences. Humanity was about to discover that their decision to leave the Council had marked them for something far worse than economic isolation. Ancient systems were awakening with one purpose: to ensure that no species could threaten the Council's power by achieving true independence. Lieutenant Beth Hamilton was working the night shift aboard the exploration vessel New Horizon when her sensors detected something that changed everything. The ship was patrolling the edge of human space, monitoring for any threats that might emerge from the growing crisis with the Galactic Council. What she found instead was evidence of a conspiracy that had been hidden for thousands of years. The energy signatures were unlike anything in the human database. Massive structures were powering up in locations that should have been empty space, their energy outputs growing stronger by the hour. Beth ran every scan she could think of, trying to understand what these installations were and why they were activating now. "Captain Wong, you need to see this immediately," Beth called to her commanding officer as the latest readings appeared on her screen. "I'm detecting automated defense platforms throughout this entire region of space. They're enormous, sir. Each one is at least 10 times larger than our biggest space station." Captain Julie Wong arrived at the sensor station within minutes, still pulling on her uniform jacket. She had been expecting trouble ever since Earth withdrew from the Council, but nothing had prepared her for what Beth was showing her. The tactical display revealed dozens of massive installations scattered across light years of space, all of them powering up simultaneously. "How long have these things been here?" Julie asked as she studied the sensor readings. "And why didn't we detect them before?" Beth worked her controls frantically, trying to answer those questions. "From the energy decay patterns, I'd estimate they've been dormant for at least 1,000 years, maybe longer. They seem to be using some kind of stealth technology that makes them invisible to normal sensors. The only reason we can see them now is because they're actively powering up." Dr. Alex Chen was having trouble sleeping in his quarters aboard the research vessel Deep Explorer when an urgent message arrived from Earth. As the expedition's chief historian, Alex had spent years studying fragmented records from pre-Council civilizations. What he had dismissed as incomplete data was suddenly looking much more important. The message from Earth's archives contained newly discovered records that had been buried in alien database fragments for decades. These records suggested that the Galactic Council's official history was incomplete at best and deliberately falsified at worst. According to these documents, dozens of advanced species had attempted to leave the Council over the past 2 millennia, and every single one had mysteriously disappeared shortly afterward. Alex pulled up his research files and began cross-referencing the new information with patterns he had noticed but never fully understood. The official Council records claim that these species had either evolved beyond physical existence, chosen voluntary extinction, or been destroyed by natural disasters. But when Alex looked at the timing of these disappearances, he found something disturbing. Every species that had left the Council had vanished within months of their departure. The Kepler Collective, which had supposedly transcended physical reality 800 years ago, had actually withdrawn from the Council just 6 months before their disappearance. The Nexer Federation, claimed to have been destroyed by a stellar collapse, had formally announced their independence from Council oversight just 3 months before their entire civilization went silent. "This can't be a coincidence," Alex muttered as he compiled the data. 37 different species, all of them advanced enough to challenge Council authority, all of them gone within a year of leaving the organization. Captain Ryan Brooks was leading a reconnaissance mission in the outer system when his ships detected something that confirmed Alex's worst fears. Hidden in the asteroid belt between the 4th and 5th planets were massive dreadnought vessels, each one larger than anything in the human fleet. These ships had been sitting motionless for decades, but now they were showing signs of activity. "Commander Smith, are you seeing what I'm seeing?" Ryan asked his second-in-command as their sensors revealed the true scale of the hidden fleet. "Those ships have been there all along, watching us. How did we never notice them before?" "Commander." Smith ran every scanning protocol they had, trying to understand how such massive vessels could have remained undetected. "Sir, they're using the same stealth technology as those defense platforms Lieutenant Hamilton discovered. The ships are designed to look like asteroids to normal sensors. If they hadn't started powering up, we never would have found them." The dreadnoughts bore markings that Ryan recognized from historical databases. These were symbols from species that the Council claimed had evolved beyond the need for physical vessels or had been destroyed in ancient wars. But here were their ships, preserved and maintained, waiting in hidden locations throughout human SPACE. Dr. Sarah Williams made the connection that tied everything together when she analyzed the technology aboard one of the abandoned alien research stations. The equipment that had been left behind when the Council scientists evacuated Earth contained data fragments that painted a terrifying picture of the Council's true purpose. President Adams, I need to brief you on what we've discovered, Sarah told the president during an emergency video conference. The Galactic Council isn't what they claim to be. They're not a peaceful alliance of species working together for mutual benefit. They're a control system designed to prevent any civilization from advancing beyond a certain technological threshold. The evidence was overwhelming once Sarah compiled it all together. The Council's regulations weren't about maintaining peace and harmony in the galaxy. They were about keeping member species dependent and controllable. Every time a civilization showed signs of true independence, they were quietly eliminated and their disappearance was explained away as a natural process. The species that supposedly evolved beyond physical existence were actually destroyed by Council enforcement fleets, Sarah continued. The civilizations that allegedly chose voluntary extinction were murdered when they tried to leave the system. The Council has been systematically eliminating any potential threats to their authority for over 2,000 years. Admiral Morrison was coordinating Earth's defense preparations when the full scope of the threat became clear. Intelligence. Reports from human scouts throughout the galaxy revealed that the Council had been preparing for this moment for decades. Hidden fleets, automated weapons platforms, and sleeper agents had been positioned throughout space, waiting for any species to challenge the system. They've been planning our destruction since the day we joined the Council, Morrison told his staff during a strategy meeting. Every regulation they imposed on us, every restriction they placed on our technology, every limitation they put on our expansion, it was all designed to keep us weak enough to control but advanced enough to be useful. The Council's member species weren't partners in a galactic alliance. They were carefully managed populations, kept at specific technological and social development levels, to maximize their usefulness while preventing them from becoming threats. The Council controlled every aspect of their advancement, allowing them to progress only in ways that served the system's needs. Lieutenant Commander Jenny Foster, who had been analyzing captured Council databases, discovered the most disturbing truth of all. The Council members themselves weren't the original founders of the organization. They were the descendants of a single ancient species that had consumed their own world's resources thousands of years ago and had created the galactic government as a way to exploit younger civilizations. The current Council leadership are the last survivors of the Archon Empire, Jenny reported to her superiors. They destroyed their own planet through resource exhaustion and technological warfare. Instead of learning from their mistakes, they decided to create a system that would let them harvest the resources and labor of other species indefinitely. The Galactic Council was essentially a farming operation on a galactic scale. They allowed civilizations to develop to a certain point, then harvested their technology, resources, and population while preventing them from advancing far enough to become competitors. Any species that refused to remain within the system's boundaries was eliminated completely. Earth scientists and military leaders finally understood what they were facing. Humanity hadn't just left a political organization, they had escaped from a predatory system that had been exploiting the galaxy for millennia. But their escape had triggered protocols designed to prevent exactly this kind of independence. The ancient defense platforms, the hidden fleets, and the systematic technology failures were all part of a containment system that had been activated the moment humanity withdrew from the Council. For the first time in over 1,000 years, a species had successfully broken free from the Council's control, and the system was responding with overwhelming force to eliminate the threat. As Admiral Morrison looked at the intelligence reports showing Council fleets mobilizing throughout the galaxy, he realized that humanity's fight for independence had accidentally started something much larger. Other species were beginning to ask questions about the disappearances of previous civilizations. Some were even attempting to make contact with human colonies despite Council prohibitions. Humanity had become the catalyst for the first galactic revolution in a millennium. The first attack came without any warning at all. The human colony on Kepler Station simply stopped responding to all communication attempts overnight. When Captain Danny Rodriguez and his rescue team arrived 3 days later, they found something that would haunt them for the rest of their lives. The colony was completely gone. Not destroyed in the way that normal weapons would destroy a settlement, but erased as if it had never existed at all. The buildings were gone, the landing pads were gone, even the foundations that the structures had been built on were missing. The planet's surface looked exactly as it had before humans had ever set foot on it. "This is impossible," Rodriguez told his crew as they conducted scans of the empty ground where 5,000 colonists had lived just days before. "There's no debris, no blast craters, no radiation signatures. It's like someone went back in time and prevented the colony from ever being built." The weapons that had done this were beyond anything in human experience. They didn't just destroy matter, they eliminated all trace that the matter had ever existed in that location. Dr. Lisa Martinez, the mission science officer, ran every test she could think of, but found no evidence that a human settlement had ever been there. "Captain, I'm not detecting any residual energy signatures. No chemical traces, not even changes in the soil composition that would indicate construction activity," Lisa reported as she studied her scanner readings. "Whatever did this has technology that operates on principles we don't understand." 2 more colonies suffered the same fate within the week. New Brisbane and Harmony Station both went silent, and rescue teams found nothing but empty worlds with all signs of human presence completely erased. The pattern was clear. Something was systematically eliminating human settlements using weapons that didn't just kill people, but removed all evidence that they had ever lived. General Patricia Lewis coordinated Earth's desperate defense efforts from the newly constructed command center in Colorado. The facility had been built using entirely human technology after all the Council-provided equipment had failed, and it was working around the clock to track the growing threat to human colonies throughout space. "We're facing an enemy that has technology centuries ahead of our own," Patricia told the assembled military leaders during their daily briefing. "They can remain invisible to our sensors until they choose to attack, and their weapons can erase entire settlements without leaving any trace behind." The intelligence reports coming in from human scouts throughout the galaxy painted an even more disturbing picture. The enemy wasn't just the Galactic Council's leadership, it was a coalition of species that had been selected specifically for their loyalty to the system and their willingness to eliminate threats to Council Authority. Commander Helen Murphy, who had been monitoring Council communications since the crisis began, discovered that many of the attacking species genuinely believed they were protecting galactic stability from a dangerous and chaotic race. The Council had spent years conditioning these civilizations to see humanity as a threat that needed to be contained or eliminated. "They've been fed propaganda about humans for decades," Helen reported during an intelligence briefing. "The Vorthik Military Command actually believes we're planning to conquer the galaxy. The Solani Defense Forces think we're developing weapons that could destroy entire star systems. They're not evil, they're terrified of us based on lies the Council has been telling them." Captain Ryan Brooks led a daring mission to infiltrate a Council military facility and gather intelligence about the enemy's plans. What he discovered there was even worse than they had feared. The Council hadn't just been preparing for humanity's elimination, they had been planning it for decades, simply waiting for an excuse to trigger their containment protocols. They have detailed psychological profiles of human behavior going back to first contact, Ryan reported after his team escaped from the facility with stolen data. Military assessments of Earth's defenses, population studies of every human colony, even contingency plans for hunting down individual humans who might escape the initial attacks. The stolen files revealed that the Council had been studying humanity with the same clinical detachment that a farmer might study livestock. They knew exactly how humans would react to various threats, how long it would take to break human morale, and what methods would be most effective for completely eliminating the species. Dr. Alex Chun, working with the captured data, made a discovery that changed everything. The Council's power wasn't based on having superior technology. It was based on creating dependency among the species they controlled. Every alien civilization had been gradually stripped of their ability to innovate and develop new solutions to problems. "Look at these educational records," Alex told his research team as they analyzed the stolen files. Council member species are taught to work within approved parameters. Their scientists are trained to request permission before conducting any research. Their engineers are only allowed to use pre-approved designs and materials. The alien species that were attacking human colonies weren't using their own technology. They were using weapons and ships provided by the Council leadership. Their military forces had been equipped with devices that could be remotely controlled or disabled if they ever turned against the system. Lieutenant Beth Hamilton, now working with Earth's Intelligence Division, uncovered evidence that many Council species had once been far more advanced than they appeared to be. Historical records showed civilizations that had developed amazing technologies before joining the Council, only to abandon those innovations in favor of Council-approved alternatives. They've been deliberately dumbing down the galaxy for centuries, Beth explained during her presentation to Earth's leadership. Every species that joins the Council gradually loses its ability to think independently and solve problems creatively. They become completely dependent on the system for everything from basic technology to scientific knowledge. Humanity's advantage wasn't just their independence, it was their refusal to accept limitations on their thinking and development. While other species had grown comfortable with Council restrictions, humans had continued developing alternative technologies in secret, often disguising their research as theoretical studies or historical projects. Dr. Mike Torres, working with a team of engineers in underground facilities, had been developing new weapons and defense systems using principles that the Council had forbidden. These projects had started as academic exercises, but now they were humanity's best hope for survival against an enemy with overwhelming technological superiority. We've been working on quantum disruption fields, temporal shielding systems, and self-replicating manufacturing protocols, Mike told General Lewis during a classified briefing. The Council banned research into these areas because they claimed it was too dangerous, but I think the real reason was that these technologies would make their control systems obsolete. As human colonies continued to disappear, Earth scientists and military leaders realized they were fighting more than just a war for survival. They were fighting to preserve the concept of independent thought and technological advancement in a galaxy that had been trained to accept limitations and restrictions. The Council's enforcement fleets were methodically working their way through human space, eliminating settlements one by one with weapons that erased all evidence of their existence. But they were also making mistakes, growing overconfident as they faced what they assumed was inferior human technology. Captain Steve Parker, whose cargo operations had been so crucial to the galactic economy, was now running supplies to hidden human bases throughout the galaxy. His knowledge of secret routes and abandoned facilities was helping humanity stay one step ahead of the Council's hunting fleets. "They expect us to fight like a Council species," Steve told his crew as they dodged another Council patrol. "They think we'll follow their rules of engagement and use approved tactics. They don't understand that humans will try anything if it gives us an advantage." The war for humanity's survival had begun in earnest, and Earth found itself leading a fight they never wanted against an enemy that had been preparing for this moment for decades. But as the Council's attacks continued, something unexpected began happening throughout the galaxy. Other species were starting to notice the disappearance of human colonies. Some were beginning to ask uncomfortable questions about the official explanations they were being given. A few were even attempting to make secret contact with surviving human settlements, risking Council punishment to learn the truth about what was really happening. For the first time in over 1,000 years, the Galactic Council's absolute control over information was beginning to crack, and the cracks were spreading faster than they could be repaired. Captain Gary White was leading a deep space patrol mission when his sensors detected something that would change the course of the war. His ship, the Far Horizon, had been searching for survivors from the destroyed human colonies when they stumbled upon a massive graveyard hidden in the void nebula beyond Council space. Thousands of starships floated silently in the cosmic dust, their hulls dark and cold after centuries of drifting in the emptiness between stars. These weren't human vessels. They belonged to dozens of different species, each one representing a civilization that had once challenged the Galactic Council's authority and paid the ultimate price for their independence. Lieutenant Johnson, are you seeing this? Gary asked his science officer as their scanners revealed the true scope of the ship graveyard. How many vessels are we looking at? Lieutenant Johnson worked frantically at his station, trying to count the massive collection of dead ships. Sir, I'm detecting at least 12,000 individual vessels from what appears to be 47 different species. Some of these designs match historical records of civilizations that supposedly evolved beyond physical existence. Dr. Maria Santos, the expedition's chief archaeologist, requested permission to board one of the larger vessels to search for data that might explain what had happened to these lost civilizations. The ship she chose belonged to the Kepler Collective, a species that the Council claimed had transcended physical reality 800 years earlier. The Kepler vessel was massive, easily 10 times larger than anything in the current human fleet. Its corridors were filled with the preserved remains of its crew, who had died at their stations during what appeared to be a desperate final battle. Maria made her way to the ship's data center, hoping to find records that might reveal the truth about the collective's fate. Captain White, I've found something incredible, Maria reported over her communication link. The main data core is still functional, and it contains detailed records of the Kepler Collective's last days. They didn't transcend anything. They were murdered by Council enforcement fleets after they tried to leave the galactic government. The data core contained communications between Kepler Collective leaders and Council representatives that painted a disturbing picture of how the system really worked. The Collective had grown suspicious of Council, restrictions on their technological development, and had begun conducting independent research into advanced physics and engineering. When the Collective announced their intention to withdraw from the Council and establish their own independent government, they were given the same diplomatic warnings that humanity had received. The Council claimed that leaving the organization would result in economic isolation and technological regression that would eventually destroy their civilization, but the Kepler Collective had been more advanced than humanity when they made their decision to leave. They had developed defensive technologies that should have protected them from Council retaliation. The records showed that they had successfully fought off the first wave of Council enforcement fleets and had even begun helping other species break free from the system. They were winning, Maria told Captain White as she downloaded the historical files. The Kepler Collective had superior technology, and they were inspiring other species to rebel against Council control. That's when the Council leadership revealed their true nature and brought out weapons that no one had seen before. The final entries in the Kepler Data Core described the arrival of massive vessels that dwarfed anything the Collective had ever encountered. These ships didn't belong to any current Council member species. They were operated by the original founders of the galactic government, beings that most people believed had died out millennia ago. Dr. Alex Chin, working with the recovered data back on Earth, made the connection that explained everything. The Galactic Council wasn't governed by the species that appeared to be in charge. The real power belonged to the descendants of an ancient civilization that had been pulling the strings. From behind the scenes for thousands of years, the current Council members are just middle management, Alex explained during an emergency briefing with Earth's leadership. The real rulers are the survivors of the Archon Empire, the species that founded the Council system after they destroyed their own homeworld through resource depletion and endless warfare. The Archons had learned from their mistakes, but not in the way that most people would expect. Instead of developing sustainable technologies and peaceful societies, they had decided to create a system that would allow them to exploit other civilizations indefinitely while avoiding the consequences of their own destructive nature. Every Council member species was essentially a farming operation designed to produce resources, technology, and labor for the hidden Archon rulers. The civilizations were allowed to develop to a certain point. Then their progress was carefully controlled to prevent them from becoming threats while maximizing their usefulness to the system. Lieutenant Commander Jenny Foster, analyzing the Broader intelligence picture discovered that the Council's farming operation extended far beyond what anyone had imagined. The system controlled not just technology and resources, but also population levels, social development, and even the genetic evolution of member species. They've been manipulating the galaxy for so long that most species don't even remember what independence looks like, Jenny reported to Admiral Morrison. The Council controls everything from education systems to reproductive policies to cultural development. They've created a galaxy of dependent children who can't survive without their guidance. The war against humanity wasn't just about eliminating a rebellious species. It was about preventing other civilizations from realizing that independence was possible. For over 1,000 years, no species had successfully broken free from the Council system and survived to tell other civilizations about the experience, but humanity's escape had changed everything. Reports were filtering in from across the galaxy, showing that Council member species were beginning to ask uncomfortable questions about the official explanations they were being given for humanity's disappearance. Some were secretly developing independent technologies in violation of Council regulations. A few were even attempting to make direct contact with human survivors. The Zolani Commonwealth had begun questioning why their scientists needed Council approval for basic research projects. The Koran Federation was wondering why their military forces were equipped with weapons that could be remotely disabled by Council authorities. Even the loyal Vorthic Dominion was starting to investigate the historical records of species that had supposedly evolved beyond physical existence. President Claire Adams addressed the surviving human colonies through encrypted communication, networks that bypassed all Council monitoring systems. The message was simple but revolutionary. Humanity had proven that escape from the Council system was possible, and other species were beginning to follow their example. "We never intended to start a galactic revolution," President Adams said during her historic broadcast. "We just wanted the freedom to develop our own technology and explore space on our own terms. But by leaving the Council and surviving their retaliation, we've shown every species in the galaxy that the system can be defeated." The true cost of leaving the Council wasn't the economic disruption or the technological setbacks that humanity had initially feared. It wasn't even the ongoing war against Council enforcement fleets that were trying to eliminate every trace of human existence. The real cost was the responsibility that came with being the catalyst for the first successful rebellion against galactic tyranny in over a millennium. Admiral Morrison looked out at Earth's expanding fleet of human-designed warships, vessels, that incorporated technologies the Council had forbidden and designed principles that challenged everything the galactic government stood for. These ships represented more than just military hardware. They were symbols of what independent technological development could achieve when freed from artificial restrictions. "We're not just fighting for our own survival anymore," Morrison told his staff during their final strategy meeting. "We're fighting for the right of every species in the galaxy to determine their own future without interference from hidden rulers, who see them as nothing more than resources to be harvested." The war for galactic freedom had begun, and humanity found themselves leading a rebellion they never intended to start, against an enemy far more ancient and cunning than anyone had imagined. But for the first time in thousands of years, the galaxy had hoped that the Council's grip on power could be broken. Other species were awakening to the truth about their situation, developing independent technologies and preparing to join the fight for freedom. The cost of humanity's independence had been higher than anyone expected, but it had also created possibilities that no one had dared to imagine. The galaxy would never be the same.